Welcome to Illustrated Beards, brought to you by The Fantasy Shop, best in comics and games since 1981. I am Jason. My guest for the evening is Mr. Tony Randazzo. You all might remember him. He sat in and told us about some awesome stuff from Comic-Con.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. I debated a little bit about it because you ramble a lot, but yeah, we decided it was good anyway.
I appreciate that.
Tonight we're going to be reviewing Nova number 13. I know it says number 1 up here. Trust me, it's not number 1. It's number 13.
Undertow number 1, which is a new ongoing series from Image Comics.
And the Batman Hush trade, which is an old one, but it just got a new printing, so we're going to talk about it. All right, as we always do, we will start with you, Mr. Guest.
All right, well, I appreciate
and
that.
And Undertow number 1.
So basically, if you're a fan of Aquaman, this could be up your alley. If you're a fan of the Submariner, maybe. A lot of it takes place under the sea.
I feel like, I am a fan of Aquaman and Namor, and this doesn't really remind me of that at all because it's such a brutal take on what the Atlanteans had to go through. I gotta tell you, I found this book to be very confusing. I was entertained, but confused.
I had to read this book probably about 2-3 times just to make sure that I caught all the details with it. But essentially, it's about this guy named Redham and Shargle, which I'm just going to go with Redham, who, from the gist of what I can get from the story, is that he started off as a citizen of Atlantis, was outcast for whatever reason. This is kind of hinted later in the story. Comes back, causes a revolution in Atlantis, and overtakes the whole population, overtakes the city. And as we jump forward to the future, he is partnered with a citizen of Atlantis who's a member of the military called Ukinu, and they are exploring the surface of the planet. They are observing humans, their hunting rituals, their habits, and subsequently are being attacked by giant birds.
Going back to what you were saying about he came back to Atlantis and caused this revolution, what I got from that opening scene is he wasn't the one who caused the revolution. That Atlantis, I felt like maybe Atlantis was at war and he came back in that crucial moment to save some of them.
That's what I'm thinking. That
it's weird.
Very vague.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that will be explained hopefully through future issues with flashbacks. Because there's a lot of reader interpretation to be done when reading this book.
It expects you to kind of fill in the blanks between some of the missing information. Like I said, I was trying to do that as I was reading the book, and I still felt very confused about the transition of, where are they now versus where Atlantis was. Are they trying to rebuild Atlantis? Is that the goal? Are they trying to abandon the hope of being in Atlantis and live on the surface?
I believe that is the goal, because what we see in the future after Redham's taken over Atlantis and liberated it is that he is looking for different ways to help the Atlanteans be capable of breathing air. I think that's the end game here. That's the goal.
Yeah, he seems like he can already do it to a certain extent.
Yeah, he's presented in a very grim look. You had commented that it looked like Frankenstein on the cover.
It does look like Frankenstein. But it does help you to not be confused by which one's him.
Yes.
Because that was one of my problems with the art is all the other characters kind of looked the same.
Yeah.
I mean, with the exception of the female character.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the fact that he looks like Frankenstein helps you to identify with him as opposed to everyone else. So that worked.
Yeah, that was a good thing about it. Overall, I'm intrigued. I would say if we had to rank it on a scale of buy it, read it, skip it, I'd say read it. Not necessarily buy it yet.
If you are intrigued by the prologue, you're going to like the rest of the book. And that's what I think is the big thing. The little prologue that takes place in the past that sets up these characters. If you don't like that, you're not going to enjoy it.
I would say if you're intrigued by the idea of Atlantis, the idea of an underwater civilization, with a little bit of kind of Kraken-esque attributes a little bit as far as kind of a very craggy look.
Yeah.
It's not polished like Aquaman.
Very dark. Yeah.
It's not very regal like the Submariner. Kind of a mixture of a couple different styles. The art really reflects that. There's a lot of very vibrant colors to help bring out different aspects of the story. The art I felt like was a good high point. It's very non-traditional.
So again, a very confusing kind of first issue, but again, it's intrigued me. I'm definitely going to pick up issue 2 and try it out. If anything, just in the hopes that it will clear up some of the confusion.
It's not a very get me from point A to point B to C kind of book. We're jumping in around point F and we're going back to point maybe D. It's definitely setting up its own little mythology. Yeah. It could end up becoming a sleeper book for all we know.
So yeah, Undertow #1 from Image Comics. It's on the shelf now. They've been good about putting out the #1s and have been pretty consistent with them. So yeah, check it out. So Nova, I'm gonna say number 13
Point now.
because I don't like saying 13 point now.
I mean, I'll go with it.
That's
It's
goofy.
catchy.
It's stupid. This has got a #1 on it as to point to the fact that it's a good jumping on point. We've talked about that on the show. You might remember Broder commenting on it.
One of the things that I hate in comic books are, this is a great jumping on point. This is a bold new direction. I mean, those are almost just telltale signs that your book does not have enough readership and that we're trying to coerce you, the consumer, to check out our book.
That made me laugh.
I don't really think that's the case with Nova. I've really enjoyed this book so far. This little kid, Sam, is the only Nova left in the galaxy after Annihilation from way back when all the Novas were wiped out. But this issue particularly, the reason I chose this one this week is because it reintroduces one of my favorite characters from every galactic story. He's pretty much in every galactic story they've ever done, and that's Beta Ray Bill. If you don't know who Beta Ray Bill is, he's kind of a horseman who dresses like Thor and also has a hammer that works very similar to Thor's.
Which they kind of reintroduced throughout that whole concept of it. So if you've forgotten about Beta Ray Bill,
Yeah, it's definitely a good reintroduction for
Yes.
him. Yeah, to
Yes.
help you understand who he is.
yes, there was a really great line in the book that I liked. There was a nice little line in there where Beta Ray Bill was referred to as Thorsey.
Basically, the setup for why Beta Ray Bill is even here on Earth is in a previous issue, Sam helped out what turned out to be a bad person.
It's kind of his Peter Parker.
It does have that kind of feel to it.
You know, kind of the burglar's running out. He doesn't stop him, and
Right.
he ends up shooting his uncle later. Kind of moment.
It turns out this person enslaved Beta Ray Bill's people, and so Beta Ray Bill comes to Earth seeking retribution, and they have kind of a, galactic superhero throwdown. I usually don't like the superhero throwdown thing because usually you're right. I mean, it's ridiculous. Most
Kind of
the
become
time.
it's become a trope.
What I am glad about and what makes me really happy is Paco Medina's art. He has a very stylized, almost borderline animation, like cartoon style.
Because I remember when they relaunched Nova with Marvel Now, it was Jeff Loeb and Ed McGuinness.
Ed McGuinness.
And it's very similar. It's a nice transition piece transition to Paco's artwork.
Yeah.
I do watch the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon on Netflix. That's my introduction to Sam as Nova. It was a good transition having that knowledge of the character and being able to jump over. As a jumping on point, maybe. But you are going to have to at least start off with the first Nova trade at this point if you're wanting to catch up on Sam's story. Maybe even Annihilation if you really want to get into what happened to the Nova Corps.
They do a pretty good job of giving you a little recap at the beginning, and that's what I like about Marvel Comics. It's something that DC doesn't do, to kind of catch you up on the bullet points. And it's not all the information that you need, but it's the pertinent information. I agree this is a horrible jumping on point, and I don't like what they've been doing with these #1s that are part of ongoing series. If you want to read Nova, I mean, the first 2 trades are available, so you don't have too much to catch up on. I think trades 1 and 2 take you through issue 12. But yeah, this was just a really cool issue. I'm a very big fan of this story, and I suggest it highly. So Nova number 13 is on the shelf from Marvel now. All right, and the trade we're going to review this evening is the new printing of Hush, which I honestly gotta say, I'm a little disappointed because I spent a lot of money getting 2 hardcover volumes of this, and combined, they were almost triple the price of this trade right here with the whole story in it. In any case, yeah. Batman Hush is an older Batman story. It was 2003.
Boom! Wow, this story is 11 years old.
I feel old.
So basically, Batman Hush is Jeff Loeb, best known for at the time his work on Batman: The Long Halloween, Batman: Dark Victory.
We're gonna leave Haunted Night off of that list.
We're gonna leave Haunted Night. Well, Haunted Night was a compilation.
That was bad.
Yeah, it was bad. But Jeff Loeb teaming up with Jim Lee, which at this point, Jim Lee had been working at Wildstorm almost exclusively after DC had acquired it. But this was Jim Lee finally doing some DC Comics work for the first time, and as he had always been posting, the character that he wanted to work on the most was Batman.
It's probably some of the best visually impressive Batman stuff I've ever seen.
It really is.
I mean, even to this day, it holds up very well.
So this story started off with a kidnapping by Killer Croc. A rich kid was being held for ransom, who, if I remember correctly, was being held by Killer Croc. The ransom was then picked up by Catwoman,
Yeah.
who then delivered it to Poison Ivy. While Catwoman was under Poison Ivy's control. This is the first issue.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very convoluted just right away, issue 1.
But this book ended up bringing some game-changing details to the Batman universe at this point. Introduced a new character named Tommy Elliott, who was from Bruce Wayne's past.
Yeah, they were childhood friends.
Yep, the Waynes and the Elliots were neighbors, I believe.
Yep.
And Tommy Elliott was there when Bruce's parents were killed, and was sort of that rock for Bruce.
But at the core of this story, it is entirely throughout, pretty much all the way up until the last issue, a big mystery.
The big mystery here too is that there was a character named Hush. That's what the whole story is named after.
Yeah.
It's this character Hush who's behind the scenes pulling the strings. And spoiler, Jason Todd.
Yeah.
Resurrected from the grave.
This was the first time we had seen him alive after a death in the family. Everything was happening behind the scenes, and then all of a sudden Bruce confronts this masked man in a graveyard, and the mask is revealed, taken off, and it's revealed that it's Jason Todd.
At first, they kind of do a double take on this. It was
Because he
Clayface.
finds out later it was Clayface taking the form of Jason Todd, or what they assume Jason Todd would look like.
So, but the big reveal here is, well, there's two ultimately big reveals in the story. The first false reveal was that Jason Todd was Hush. They copped that out and said that was Clayface. In a later story, it turned out that it was Jason Todd at first, and in a moment where they slipped away, then they switched places and it was Clayface, all because Superboy Prime Cosmic punched a wall that changed continuity.
He punched reality.
Gotta love
He
it.
literally punched reality,
true
and that
story.
is the story. That's
True
how it
story.
was written. Horrible. I don't know who at the table was thinking that would be a good idea, and that there wasn't somebody there that went, "That's stupid."
So the first big reveal is that Tommy Elliott is Hush. Even though we don't, at one point in the story, the Joker shows up and kills Tommy Elliott in an alleyway.
Turns out that was Clayface too.
That was Clayface as well. It later comes back out that yes, Tommy Elliott is Hush, but you don't see the bandages come off, so there was no real clear resolution.
The
with
only
that.
thing that was a clue was the little necklace he had around his neck. Tommy Elliott, when he was a kid, he had this little emerald circle that his mother had given to him. When you meet Hush at the end of the story, he's wearing the necklace. So that's your only indicator that that's Tommy Elliott under that, because yeah, they never see the bandages come off to show us that that's actually who that is. So there's still a mystery at the end of the story.
The second reveal.
Right, the final big moment is the Riddler was the one behind it all.
that Hush was working in collusion with the Riddler.
And that is actually such a fantastic thing, because the Riddler is, in and of himself, kind of a joke villain. And even in the story, they have a moment where the Riddler's like robbing an armored car, and they treat him like a joke. Like, Batman doesn't take him seriously and doesn't think that this person could ever be involved in this big plot, this big interweaving plot that's trying to take him down. So, he figures it out, and honestly, what made the Riddler more of a threat was he was dying. He had an inoperable brain tumor, but he took a dip in a Lazarus pit, cured himself, but came out with such a clarity that he figured out the answer to the ultimate riddle.
What else was monumental about this storyline too was, okay, we mentioned Catwoman earlier. At this point, we reach a big moment in Bruce and Batman and Catwoman's history where throughout everything that Batman's going through, he finally opens up to Catwoman. Catwoman at this point had been writing the vigilante line.
She was on more of a, when Batman needed help, she was there.
This is post No Man's Land, post War Games
War
world.
Games.
Post War Games world, where Spoiler's been killed at this point, and she becomes part of the family at this point.
Yeah, he revealed his identity to her, which was good. That was a change in his character. He had not done that a lot. This represented a big step in their relationship. But then you find out, literally 6 pages later, that him and Robin had a plan, this fight that they were having. Like, you told her? No, you can't tell her, blah, 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 blah. And it was all just a plot by Bruce to get Selina where he needed her to be. And she realized it later, and she confronts him like, you used me.
There's one little epilogue there.
It goes out, with the fact that Bruce had become so close to Catwoman during the story, And at the end, he pushes her away again.
Which was a very odd way to end the story, honestly, because you feel like it almost reminds you of a Simpsons episode.
Everything's back to normal at the end.
Everything is back to normal at the end. The only carryover from it is that Catwoman now knows, Selena Kyle knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman. The Riddler knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman and he's cured of his cancer.
In any case, though, it's a new printing of Batman. Of Batman Hush. It was a really big deal.
DC Comics will tell you that this is an essential Batman story. I can think of probably 10 more Batman stories to put in front of Hush. If you've gotten past some of the more essential stories like Year One, Dark Knight Returns, Long Halloween, Dark Victory, Arkham Asylum, then you can get into it. Jason disagrees with me, though.
I think it's an essential piece because of what it did for the world. I mean, Tommy Elliott, after this story, became a very big part of the Batworld.
And I would recommend, too, if you're looking for a follow-up to the story, too, for Tommy Elliott, there are 3 follow-up stories that came after. The first one was Hush Returns. Skip it. It was right before Infinite Crisis, so we can kind of forget that. Once again, Superboy Prime punched the wall and hopefully punched that story out of existence. The follow-up for it would be Heart of Hush and House of Hush by Paul Dini and Dustin Nguyen. It took place around Batman R.I.P., Batman Incorporated time, and really digs into just how crazy Tommy Elliott is. His complete rage towards the Wayne family really fuels him.
Yeah.
And really just shows how twisted he is. But most importantly, too, it does pick up on the thread that was left at the end of the story with Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle.
Yeah.
And I feel like if this is essential reading, those other 2 stories are essential reading as well.
But so, yeah, it's a new printing. Obviously, what that means is it'll be available. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's essential. Definitely give it a good read because it's still, like I said, it still holds up today. So, Batman Hush trade paperback is sitting on the shelf now. So, that is going to bring us to the end. As always, if you want to hear us review a trade or a graphic novel, leave it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe. I want to say special thanks to Tony for coming out and hanging out and talking with me about all these cool stuff, this cool comics and trades that have come out.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So keep reading your comics, and we will see you next week.